How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the James Loud Podcast. And today our special guest is David Downs, executive editor from Leafly. How are you doing today, David?
Hello, James. Thanks so much for having me. And thank you, James Loud watchers, for tuning in. I so appreciate your guys' time.
Man, it's been great. I'm so glad you're on the show. It's been like, cannabis celebrity, cannabis aficionado, one after the next, the top growers, the top writers.
Yeah.
Someone, I wrote a book recently, and before I wrote the book and when I was writing articles, I looked up to your work, and I feel like you've been doing it for a while. You're San Francisco Chronicle.
Thank you.
Doing some amazing stuff. And, I feel like there was the high times guys, and then there was the guys that went more mainstream that had more to risk. And you were one of those guys.
For sure.
It's great having you here on the show.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been on the beat since 2009. Started at the East Bay Express in Oakland, just up the road from here, at an alt weekly. And we, conceived of executing a cannabis column the way they covered courts or sports or city hall in terms of a lot of factual analysis and 3 live sources and staying on top of trends. And at the time I was a freelance journalist. I had written for Wired and Rolling Stone and The Onion. I had like a music and technology background, and I was really concerned, like, is this going to sabotage my career? And it went from being like one file folder in a file cabinet to being like my entire life. I've written 3 books, and it's taken me all over the world, and we're still on it. There's still day one.
Pretty amazing. Well, and it's so great because I feel like we're in this amazingly beautiful time with cannabis and decriminalization. It hasn't happened yet, but we are in this beautiful place because we are the ones as a collective group making all this happen.
For sure.
And with the podcast, with the writing, with the cultivating, we're on the shoulders of some giants that came before us that were real cowboys and considered outlaws. And those people that were outlaws, I feel like they're businessmen now doing the same thing. We're businessmen. We have, entrepreneurs, businessmen. They didn't call them those things back then. They were outlaws.
Yeah, I think of Larry Jew, and he tells you to bet on yourself and start a corporation and put your people on payroll and pay your taxes and be enterprising. I feel like we're at this era where they're passing the torch down. The boomers are finally letting go of the steering wheel, or it's being pried out of their hands. And the next generation of culture keepers are coming up underneath them, and they're really enterprising. They're using all the tools available to them. And it's great to see so many of them kind of just run wide open in a time when they're really needed. It's very much a golden era of cannabis with the genetics.
Yeah.
And then every day new markets are coming online. I get to tell good news stories to people every day and spread this literal gospel. Ohio just launched. Florida's got adult use on the ballot.
Right.
South Dakota, I think, might have to vote on it again. And we see all that new interest and new people coming in every day at Leafly, and it's very energizing.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people, these cultivators and stuff like that, some people are down in their luck, and there are tough times at the same time, but there still is the beautiful side of the story. And I love both sides. I think you can't have one without the other. It's the yin and yang, the balance. And whenever you move into a market like this, there's going to be a time where it's not stable, which is going on, especially in the California market right now. It's not very stable. And there's upcoming markets like Florida, which really excites me. New York, which is kind of a shit show, but still really impressive.
Yeah. It's the best of times and worst of times. It just depends on which grower you talk to. We did SF Weed Week in April and SF Hash Week in July. And these are these big series of events to honor the cannabis culture in the Bay Area.
Yeah. And
we consistently talked to people who were adding lights, really excited about the future, adding buildings, selling out, like they can't put it on their wholesale websites fast enough, and it's being scooped up. At the same time, you hear people who are having a really tough go of it. They've gave it their all. They put all their final dollars on it. They still had some tough breaks, or just the taxes are bad, the regulations are bad, and they're really suffering. And it's tempting to think that that experience is globalized, but you have to remember that the people who are doing well are kind of quietly doing well, because it's kind of gauche to say to someone who's suffering, well, like, that's too bad for you. We're we're rocking it out over here.
Yeah.
And so I do see all of it. And we're ultimately going to just be in this era of price compression and industrialization of production. So you just have to like deal with that reality. But the good news is that if you have good stuff, we see it still commanding top shelf prices. You just talked about $500 ounces,
Right.
Around here that are still being commanded, even as, we're hearing about the $9 eighth down in SoCal.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a handful of guys really setting the bar for what good cannabis is, for what good quality cannabis is. I mean, Blueprint. We got Jordan from Blueprint growing amazing stuff over there. Obviously Connected, they've been killing it for years, but SF Canna, Planta, NorCal Nemo. We got the Hustle brand. My buddy has that. And these guys are really, and then you got breeders, you got, even Doja and all these guys like really trying to push the boundaries with genetics, trying to change it up a little bit, not just offering lemon cherry gelato, because you're not going to get by on Runts or lemon cherry gelato anymore. That just
I mean, I too see amazing top shelf growers, and the cool thing is the top shelf just keeps getting higher.
Yeah.
Whether it's because you got the cost per unit down and it's still that AAA quality, or you found like a quadruple A quality that nobody has seen before. I must smoke hundreds of strains a year between judging cups and reviewing everything for Leafly. And I have never gotten like bored or tired or thought I'd seen it all.
Yeah.
Every day brings a new thing across my radar. Just this week, it was Connected with their Trop Z that just dropped, cross of Xeno to Granddaddy Purple and Tom Hill Haze, a mix of new and old, where they were trying to go after a sativa hybrid effect and revivify the sativa space.
Yeah, I like that space.
Yeah.
Not everybody does. And I feel like a lot of people steer away from it. Like when I show them Super Silver Haze, they're like, whoa, that doesn't fit well into the market. And it's like, maybe not your market. But if you go up to Mendo or you go up to Humble or you go Sonoma and you talk to any of the OGs, you show them that, they're like, oh yeah, I love this stuff.
Yeah. We see traffic on Leafly, consistent high performance for a lot of legacy sativa hazes. Yeah. So Blue Dream is still a number one search strain on the West Coast. And it dropped down below Wedding Cake for a minute, but it's right back on top. There's a Jack Mafia out there that loves Jack. I think you could run like, this is a free business idea, but you could run a Jack Club in California and have a mailing list of like 5,000 fools who buy an ounce of Jack every month if you could promise them that it's top shelf Jack, because the good stuff kind of moves around a bit.
It does. Well, the Jack Club's in Oakland and they're breaking into cars every day.
I know. That's the Jacker Club or the Jacka Club.
Yeah.
But I don't know the trademark of being able to even use the Jack Club. But I do see like the Super Silver Haze fans are diehard and they can't get enough of it. I mean, Flora and Flame even has a good Super Silver Haze.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Those are so Chris is one of my really good friends. That's some of his Donnie Burger rosin right there.
Yes.
So I see a lot of rosin. I'm judging the rosin category for a change. Usually I judge flower, but they were like, well, here's rosin. And then we didn't have time to switch
graduated.
it. I'm okay. I'll do rosin too every once in a while. I love judging flower because I'm super critical over every last little detail of it. And I love like if you give me 20 samples, I'll put them in order of what I think they are just from the nose. And then I'll go back and forth between them for 5 or 6 days or 7 days. I do that with all my own stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So with rosin, I have the same kind of approach. And there's some Donnie Burger entries that I've smoked over the years. And then there's the Flora Flame Donnie Burger, which was harvested at the correct date. It has more of like a floral note. It's still really unique. And you could tell that it's related to GMO, but it's its own thing. And I love Donnie Burger in extract. And I'm not a huge Donnie Burger fan for flower.
Shout out everything coming off GMO right now. It really is holding its own and widening its lane. Donnie Burger, Han Solo Burger, Double Burger. Yeah. The burgers in general, we're telling people all over the country to seek them out and find them. And then we're seeing them take home awards. And
if they're done right, they will take home awards for sure. I also like papaya.
Sure.
I like papaya. I like whitethorn rose.
Sure.
So, and there's so many different good things. And it's so subjective to the moment too.
We're going to put 1,000 strains in the Leafly database this year. And it's not like a publicity stunt or reach goal. It's just the top 50 breeders, 20 strains they put out this year.
Right.
That's 1,000 right there.
Yeah.
And that's not even including renames of something or a marketing push from a brand that they're like, oh, we took a Donny Burger and we crossed it, and now it's like Delicious Burger, and we want to get Delicious Burger in the strain database. If people are searching for Delicious Burger, we're going to add it.
Yeah.
But they're different, and the spectrum keeps widening. We are seeing aromas that, like the Whitethorn Rose Lane.
Yeah.
That is really unique. You had one back there that smelled like rose water. I just wonder where it's going to go next. I'm excited.
Well, and really the sky's the limit. We have so many guys putting effort into breeding quality genetics. I think there's a million people doing it, and then there's a handful of people that are just killing it and doing it the right way. Really doing good pheno hunts, not just making seeds, and really the breeding side of it, it's all about the pheno hunt. It's all about finding something new. That's where you should get the enjoyment from. I mean, it's fun to make seeds too, don't get me wrong, but really that pheno hunt is what makes you a good breeder or not a good breeder. It's just because you can get good genetics and make good seeds doesn't mean you're a great breeder. It's the guys that are really doing the R&D and spending the time with the plants and putting the hours in.
I want to see them surface that too. I want to know more about the story behind what they're bringing to market.
Yeah.
So much of what I'll see, especially from overseas a lot of time, will feel like the provenance is opaque. I'm like, where the fuck did this come from? Yeah. What did you cross it with? Where did you grow it? Who's your grower? Where are your facilities? And they oftentimes can't tell you that because
of legality.
Yeah. And they used to have all the mojo over there, but now under the Farm Bill, we can move quick here.
Yeah.
And in the daylight. And the top breeders, the ones that won the awards, when you go to them, they can tell you exactly what they did and how they did it.
Right.
And they're really transparent.
They are transparent, but the one thing I feel needs work is we need fingerprinting, where we can submit samples to MyFlora DNA or whoever it is that has a database where we can compare, and it's from the breeder and it says, this is my shit. And because there's so much renaming going on and people are breeding with cuts. I have Skittles and I made a cross with Skittles, but it was really lemon tree, or it was really this, or it was really that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, it's wild. It's a Wild West time. It's wide open. One thing I'm thinking about more is how to ascertain quality by cosign. Like a lot of times it comes down to reputation, like who will fuck with you, who likes you. And so we gave Archive Seeds Strain of the Year for Dosey Dose. And it was kind of a miss in the audience, but I still fuck with Archive Fletch. I grow his stuff. I've grown his Dosey tree, and it grew an actual lemon tree sized tree in my backyard in 1 year.
So have you had the Moonbow IX?
I have had it. I haven't grown it yet.
So from Flora Flame, they have the Moonbow IX that they just harvested some. He didn't tell me it was the IX. He told me it was Moonbow 112, but it's Moonbow 112 IX. And I love that.
Yum.
I love 112 as it is. I know Adam from Archive up in Portland, and he hooks me up with some amazing flower. And that's one of the things that I've gotten from him that I just love. And the IX from Flora Flame is amazing.
I believe it. We gave Strain of the Year to Permanent Marker last year. Went down and saw Seed Junkies facilities. We saw the flavors. We tasted them. We saw what was happening in the market. We saw who was winning awards. They clearly have a lane that they're digging down into and staying even further ahead. I just saw some new zebra stripes that is growing out in the market. Cherry marker. I have my brother's growing a permanent marker cross in his backyard, and it's beasting out.
Nice.
So it's I feel like there's more breeder names than ever and seeds than ever, and yet our ability to ascertain who's good and who's bad. It's a real it's an opportunity and a challenge, And so I'm thinking about like, how do we surface breeder signs of quality? Like, what are the things you can, as a consumer, ask about before you spend 18 pounds on 3 seeds for something that's essentially like a Northern Lights auto cross that just kind of watered down whatever came over from America?
Yeah. Well, all of it's a challenge. I mean, going to the dispensary and finding good flower is a challenge because packaging, I've talked about it on my show a lot. That. I mean, I can't wait for us to be able to go to the dispensary and they have jars and chopsticks. I mean, I think
they have it in Missouri now.
They do. They have it in Oregon.
They have deli style.
I love the deli style.
You stick your nose in the jar.
You should be able to stick your nose in the jar. You know what I mean? And then the flower speaks for itself, right? And I love that.
I want to work with Californians on bringing back deli style or smell jars. I was talking to one club that was like, how do we get the smell going? And I was like, because they always complain about the cost of burning a jar, for smell.
Sure.
And they're like, our margins are so low, we can't afford to put out a smell jar. And I'm like, well, maybe the opposite. Maybe you can't afford to not put out a smell jar, because to me, the smell, it makes the sale.
Right.
Like, imagine going to a banana stand. They're like, you can't see the bananas, you can't touch the bananas, and you can't smell the bananas.
But you can see the packaging.
The bananas are $60.
Yeah.
I wouldn't buy any fucking bananas.
Yeah.
I would go find a guy who had bananas and I could see if I want a banana.
Totally.
And it's just overregulation. It's too much. It's dumb. A shout out the artistry in West Hollywood. They got those little boxes on chains with this poofy, squishy corner.
Nice.
And so you can smell something. That's where I picked up some permanent
I think
marker.
Cookies has the jars with the perforated holes on them, and you can smell. And I think
There's a couple.
It's okay, but we really need the deli style to come back. I feel like there's just something about chopsticks too that I love.
I know. They still regulate it like it's plutonium.
Yeah.
Instead of an herb.
And the places we're regulating it that don't need to be regulated. And then there's other places like testing across the board that, they're trying to make improvements, but there's no consistency. That needs to be run by the state a lot better, or run by the federal government eventually. And there's a lot of people who are saying they want less regulations. Well, I want less regulations too. But when it comes to testing, I think we need to have something that's stable across the board where people know that, this 22% is really 22%. And if I go somewhere else, it says 22%, even though it doesn't tell the whole story, it's still a determining factor, and it will still tell you somewhat of how the effect is.
We're seeing California clamp down on THC inflation.
Yeah.
But behind that is whether or not those pesticide tests are accurate, and then what pesticides they aren't testing for. Way back in 2019, in the before times, we had a rash of lung injuries across the country from people putting vitamin E oil in pens. And
popcorn lung.
Yeah, we got to the bottom of that, and we kept reporting on it. And we came to the conclusion that back 4 or 5 years ago now that we're going to need random endpoint testing, and then random on property testing, just to make sure you're not using one of the 500 exotic pesticides that can't be in the panel that they normally test for, the 64 pesticide panel.
Yeah.
Because those might be the usual suspects, but that just automatically pushes people to the exotic weird pesticides to get around that 64 panel.
For sure.
And we haven't seen that done here. Some states like Washington affirmatively list a bunch of pesticides that they are okay with you spraying. I've never seen EPA data showing you can burn that stuff and inhale it and it's all groovy.
Right.
And the one upside we've seen lately is that there are now third-party certifications and third-party labels for people who want to affirm that we swear to God, we're not using any pesticides. Come inspect us.
Yeah.
Come inspect our end product. Do it anytime you want. We'll pay you. And so you see the OCal certified.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's it stands for, you can't use the word organic because of the FDA.
Right.
But you can apply all those standards and the voters asked the state to come up with OCal. And so now we're seeing OCal pot come out. And then
Jetty. I think Jetty has it on their carts.
Yeah.
The car. I love that.
You can get OCal dabs.
Yep.
And if you really, really, really can't be exposed to any pesticides at all for a health reason, you can shop OCal now.
Yeah.
And then we have Sun and Earth certified as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they also claim that their banned pesticides list isn't 64 like the state. It's 250.
Yeah.
And you're going to be jumping through those hoops. And so that's optimistic to me because that's the free market and people choosing and voting with their dollars for better versus more government.
Right.
But that the missing piece is still people making that choice and knowing the choices available.
Right. Well, and I think it's really important with concentrates because it is a concentrated version. So you are concentrating those chemicals. Just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah.
But it's man, if you're smoking concentrates, you want it as clean as possible.
Yeah. 100%. And I'm from the medical era. I'm sure we smoked some pesticides.
For sure.
And I made
powdery mildew.
I
we
did
smoked
Beyond
a lot
Buds
of PM.
for Ed Rosenthal in 2014, and they were open blasting, and I was hiding behind a tree with a notepad while the filter got jammed up, and they're banging on it,
Wild.
And they were concentrating some sketchy stuff. And then when you concentrate it and burn it, some of the things it turns into when you burn it are really, really not cool. Like
Really
basically
bad,
akin to like mustard gas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the people are like, well, how much mustard gas? And I'm like, can I have none? How about none?
How about zero?
I'm in the mood for zero.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's where, it's like we don't have a lot of long-term data on the effects of these things either.
Yeah.
So we will eventually.
Yeah. I feel like we're getting down this weird lane where like, bro, I legalized weed. I want to smoke weed. I didn't legalize shark liver oil in my lungs. Like if you want to go put shark liver oil in my lungs, which is a vitamin E acetate, analog, go to the FDA, prove it's safe.
We need to treat it to a degree. We need to treat it like medicine, even if it's being used recreationally.
Yeah. I mean, for me, legalization was like telling the FDA, sit down about marijuana. We got this.
Yeah.
But it was the marijuana, the cannabis, not like additives, fillers, dilutants, thickeners. There's a lot of other stuff that are not cannabis that I did not legalize when I legalized it.
Right. And we have this really amazing opportunity to make the world a better place. And that takes away from that opportunity. With cannabis and with legalization, we can make the world a better place. Cannabis by itself makes the world a better place.
My Uber driver headed to West Hollywood. Her husband, back surgeries from football, college or high school, in permanent pain on opioids. The wife was like, man, I'm losing my husband to opioids. And she doesn't even smoke. She's straight, but she knows that there's like cannabinoids are alternatives.
Yeah.
And so he was super anti, but she got him on it. And now he has pain control. He has quality of life. He has sleep. He has, he's eating right. His mental attitude is better. He's a happy, like functional pothead now. And she, just driving me to this party where we're going to go celebrate the adult use side of it. But the medical side of it is the other side of the coin. And it's always right there. And it's like, my career is a career of people walking up to me and saying like, thanks for writing about this. Cannabis gave me my life back.
Yeah.
For all these ailments.
Totally.
Spooky.
It is. It's really wild. And, it's subjective to the individual. And I feel like there's so many uses for it. And it works differently because we all have different body chemistries. But there are profound medical benefits that we've seen, especially with children and seizures.
40% reduction rate.
How can you argue with that?
These kids were dying of incurable seizures. They were going to die. Yeah. And then you gave them a plant oil extract and 4 in 10 stopped having seizures.
Yeah.
Just stopped. And then the other 6 had less. And the side effects were way better than the other stuff. I, as a parent, I would move anywhere in the world to get access to that kind of seizure control.
Yeah.
And we're still kind of at day one. Like I know what we're looking into now is cannabinoids for other mental health issues like schizophrenia, bipolar and stuff. I think the rest of our lives will be dominated by new cannabinoid therapies.
Well, drug discovery through cannabis.
Yeah.
And plant medicine. And I think plant medicine can be so vast too. So we're going to start with cannabis and then they're really going to dive into other whole plant extractions. I mean, we had a guest a couple of weeks ago that was talking about THCV and C-cope.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like there's other things out there that we really haven't fully explored. And that's just a whole nother lane. And I think that's really exciting. That's exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, when the cost per unit of cannabinoids is cents on the dollar and it's legal, you're going to see it in a lot of cosmetics.
Yeah.
There's like, you can control acne or control inflammation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or like neuralgia, like pain.
Yeah.
And it's just so sad how many people had to suffer for so long for no good reason to get to this point where we're like, we've had enough of the Controlled Substances Act and this kind of regime that we've been going about it.
It was for a really bad reason.
Yeah.
A really bad reason for a handful of individuals that basically wanted to take advantage of the system.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so happy people stood up and expressed their right to vote and we had direct democracy. We had enough data in as a polity, as a people to be like, we're going a different way. Yeah. There's lots of states that don't have the referendum process and they can't just stand up and vote. And I mean, even in Florida, you got to get to 2/3. It's not majority rules, weed's legal. Right. It's 2/3 majority rules, weed's legal. And they're close to getting there. They're like right on the cusp of getting like 60 something percent.
Pretty wild.
Well, I mean, medical polls in the 90%. Like clean water doesn't poll at 90%.
No.
And then adult use polls in the 60s, like high 60s. And it's a different era than even 12 years ago. So Leafly, for example, came of age in a time when people were afraid of their boss looking over their shoulder at them looking at weed on a site. So they were always really buttoned down and demure and calm and demure about what was going on. And now that kind of reeks of trying to be a model minority or like respectability politics. And in reality, pot has 66% of the vote. Medical pot has 90% of the vote. We don't have to justify ourselves to anyone. Our culture is just as valid as it is today. It doesn't need to put on a suit. It doesn't need to like speak a special language. It has a right to exist on its own. And the majority of people in the country think that. And de Tocqueville talks in the 1850s about the power of the majority will. The second the majority of Americans think something, if you're not in that majority, you're out in the political wilderness. You're like, you just don't have any power. Right. And so cannabis won and cannabis people won. We have nothing to be ashamed of. We have nothing to apologize for. And we don't have to change for anyone. Yeah.
And I mean, it's just becoming more normal by the day, you know, especially compared to the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You know, in the 2000s, it started gaining popularity. And then there was this beautiful time, you know, like with the early High Times Cannabis Cups in the US, where it was the vibe there was like disco. It'll never be the same. I'm seeing it in places like Colombia, in Mexico, in Germany, and you know, Spain still has that kind of 2010 vibe in the US where people are they haven't been jaded yet. It hasn't been fully commercialized yet, and they love the plant. And you know, and it's so exciting. I'm going to Mexico October, the beginning of October for La Trajanera Cannabica.
Oh my God.
And so I'll be speaking out there at the event. I'm giving seeds out again. I did it 2 years ago. We gave out a ton of free seeds. And there is free seed day. Masonic is doing his free seed day thing now.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I mean, these are the people that deserve it. These are the people that probably can't afford the good genetics, and to have breeders give out genetics that are quality and put those genetics in the hands of the people down there. I mean, it reminds me of 2010 and what I love about cannabis so much.
Yeah. It's shocking to see the plant go so full circle because, I mean, again, back in the 1800s in Mexico City, they were selling weed out of stalls. These women were called curanderas, like the curers, you know, witch doctory women, but they were plant medicinists, they were using plant medicine. And they were doing it because they had indigenous knowledge around how powerful plants were. Yeah. And when the explorers showed up with hemp, they took it into their pharmacopoeia, found out all its medical properties, and made it their own and was like selling it back. And so the first reefer madness starts with like Mexico City, you know, weed stalls being like, can we even have these? These chicks are out here selling weed, and the AP, you know, Associated Press is like sending stories back. Wow. To be able to bring refined cannabis seeds, marijuana seeds back to Mexico and have them plant what we worked on up here is just so poetic and perfect, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I made a cross specifically for them that was a gelato times Mexican haze.
Okay.
And so I have some of the, here, I'll show you.
All right.
It's got the haze nose, like, but it also, you could tell it's gelato. It looks like gelato. It smokes like gelato with haze, but it's more of that energetic kind of high. It's not like super silver. It's more of a hybrid, but it still has like an energeticness to it. You know, it's unique. It's unique and it's fun.
That's what, like, I feel like whenever you go do things like that, you are tapping into being of service of the plant, and not to get spiritual or spooky, but things go better for you when you align yourself with what the plant wants to do.
Well, at the end of the day, we're all just stewards of the plant. It's not our plant. We're just here to add some part of ourselves to it and to its legacy, because it has its own legacy, right? And so we have our legacy, but our job as stewards is just to impart part of ourselves into it to move the plant along so other people can do the same. You know, we don't own it, even though it feels like I own these genetics and I made this. Well, man, we're working on the backs of the guys in the 60s and 70s, And they're, even 50s, 60s, and 70s, and the explorers and the guys that went out and got those seeds from Afghanistan, Colombia, all over India, you name it. And, this plant's been in existence forever. At least 2,000 years in medicine, Chinese medicine, even
3,500 years. Yeah.
3,500 years. And it's pretty amazing that we've moved the plant to where it is now. And now we have all these different flavors. And I'm trying to take a refocus into effect.
Yeah.
Where I kind of went away and I was all about flavor for the last 5 years and really refocusing myself back into the effect of the plant. And I think that's so important. But it's also recognizing without ego that we're here for the plant and to move the plant forward, not the other way around.
Yeah. Michael Pollan in The Botany of Desire talks about 4 different plants that got humans to do their bidding. And cannabis was one of them, similar to like dogs. We think we domesticated them, but we've taken dogs all over the world. And the cannabis gene wants to spread to every biome in the globe. And it did not have anything going on in the Americas as best as we know until the Spanish explorers brought the hemp over. But the second it landed, it just colonized the whole continent. And now you have Alaskan thunderfuck, all the way down to probably some Chilean Tierra del Fuego.
Totally. And then we got Jamaica, we got islands with cannabis, Hawaii's got their thing going on. They've been doing it for quite a while, and all the slaves that did bring this stuff to Jamaica.
Yeah. And it's called the Columbian Exchange. This idea of old and new mixing.
Yeah.
So potatoes went from Peru to Ireland.
Totally.
Tomatoes went from here to Italy. Cannabis came from over. And we've spent the last, 500 years mixing global genomes, and we're not done. The plant's not done with us doing its bidding.
No.
No.
And it's something that we were meant to consume. We wouldn't have these receptors in our bodies if we weren't meant to consume it. And it wouldn't make us healthier, I don't think. But yeah, we have all these receptor sites, and we're just scratching the surface of the medical side of it, which I love. The fact that we're still pushing it forward and we're still in this golden era in certain ways. I feel like maybe people consider the golden era that, pre what we're at now, but I feel like with medicine and plant medicine and science and being able to use AI and computers to drive the breeding. And I think the potential is just really wild where we can go. And now that we understand sequencing a lot better, imagine 10 years from now when we can really dial this stuff in.
Yeah, and also we're seeing the end of the single molecule, single target approach to medicine, which is very useful. We have penicillin and anything else.
Yeah.
But there were some medicines that resisted the single molecule, single target paradigm. Cannabis is one of them. They just threw their hands up and go, well, it's an entourage. There's a lot of shit in there. It works better when it's all together.
Yeah.
Even Epidiolex has entourage. It's not just CBD in an oil. They found a way to characterize it as a whole plant extract.
Yeah.
So that GW Pharmaceuticals knows you need the other stuff in there, even if they can't validate the other stuff, in these eyes. And the cool thing now is you can use big data and surveys and come at it from the other end and be when we gave this to 1 million people and they all got back to us and there's something here. They're all reporting anti-nausea. They're all reporting better sleep. They're all reporting less depression, less anxiety. And with Leafly, the reviews we get, it's really clear if a strain is more arousing than other strains.
Yeah.
Wedding Cake has really strong arousing signals from our consumers. They are smoking it and getting it on and logging on and more than average, because people would say, well, any weed will make you horny. Maybe. Yeah. But some cultivars, some chemovars, some chemotypes are a standard deviation above the average. And there's a list of them.
Yeah.
And that every effect can be come at from a big data point of view where we can just set aside trying to find the thing out of the whole mix that is doing the thing. We can just go, well, it's this whole thing. And when you give it all, this thing kind of pops out at the end and you can go spend the next 2 generations figuring out what in Wedding Cake is making people horny.
Well, and I think the bigger thing is we have Wedding Cake and we can figure that out. But once you have 20 different things that have the same effect, then we can compare and we can see where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
and what part of the plant, cannabinoids, terpenes or flavorants. I think thiols have now been renamed. I mean, there's still thiols, but they've also been renamed flavorants. If we're talking about sulfur in the plants.
Yeah, volatile sulfur compounds now.
Absolutely. I mean, Abstracts Tech wrote those white papers and kind of changed the game.
Thank you.
And
I'm glad they did.
yeah, I mean, we need people like that. We need people pushing it forward, and especially, using their minds and doing it the right way to where some of these studies are funded by companies. Some have, I feel like some of these people are just saying stuff to say stuff, and you can really get supporting data from almost anything.
I mean, those guys genuinely love fucking weed.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because we had this era where people are like, it's all the THC. And then we were like, found terpenes. And we're like, it's all the terpenes.
Right.
But even at Leafly, you'd see things with the same top 3 terpenes that were just different.
Right.
And you're like, I smoke all this weed and you're telling me these 2 things are the same because the top 3 terps are the same. And I'm telling you, they're not the same.
Right.
You're going to have to keep going. And Abstracts did keep going. And they found some stuff that's at the part per million level, at the part per billion level.
Much smaller molecules.
But they have outsized effects,
right.
which is so obvious to me that not all molecules are created equal. They don't all have the same sized effects. Right. One molecule can have 1,000 times action at a receptor than a different molecule. And so just weighting them in sheer amounts doesn't get at the whole story. It's like a guidepost, but you have to be humble and hold space for what we still don't know.
Right. And I mean, I think a lot of us just contributed citrus to limonene and they proved that's wrong. It's like stuff like that. And
or the amount of limonene.
Right.
A little can smell like one thing and a lot can smell like another.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you add 3 and other things at other levels, and then all the things you can't measure, you end up having to kind of default to be like, man, trust your nose. Yeah. Trust what you like. Trust what gives you a good experience. It's so simple, when we're trying to get that, be simple for our audience and not overwhelm them or make them feel dumb. And so I'm so proud to be able to go back to the audience and be like, just smell weed and smoke what you like for a while and maybe write it down or check it on Leafly,
or collect data points on yourself.
Because some people, they smell a chem and they're like, I remember getting a panic attack from that smell.
Yeah.
And they're like, no. And good, don't hit that.
Yeah.
Even if it has chemotype that someone said is exactly what you need. Mm-hmm. No, smoke something else. You smell lavender and you're like, oh, this smells like my favorite girlfriend from freaking freshman year.
Yeah.
Try that.
Mom's perfume or whatever it is.
Yeah. And trust your nose. As far as I know, the sense of smell is the first sense to develop in the womb.
Yeah.
And then it's the strongest memory trigger. So they will use smells in memory care facilities with people with dementia and Alzheimer's to help bring them back to a moment or bring them back to reality.
Wow.
And I know I could visit a room I hadn't been in 20 years with my eyes closed and I could smell that room like a basement or something. And I know exactly where I am.
Absolutely.
And I think weed's like that too. And we think it's probably because our sense of smell of volatiles in the environment kept us alive.
Yeah.
You needed to eat the right thing. Or if you ate the wrong bitter berry, you died. If you did disacknowledge the animal that was stinky or like a skunk, you maybe didn't pass on your genes. Mm-hmm. And I think I have a little bit more heart for people that say, I don't like the smell of weed. It smells like skunk. I think what they're trying to say is that some lower part of their limbic system is afraid.
Yeah.
Some part of them that they aren't even conscious enough is being like, there is a fucking skunk around here.
Yeah.
I don't want to get sprayed. Because if you are a caveman and you got hit in the face with a skunk, you're going to have a bad day. You might not even make it to the next day.
There was no ketchup back then.
There was no ketchup. Right. There was none of the things you could use to wash it off.
That's the cure, by the way. For you get sprayed by a skunk or your dog does, it's bathing in ketchup.
Yeah. But now, my dog gets partially skunked and I'm like, smells like brake pads. Someone's burning brakes or chronic. What's going on?
Yeah. I love that.
Now.
I honestly love, in small doses, love that sprayed skunk smell. And we I think the new term is roadkill skunk or whatever, but we didn't have roadkill skunk when I was a kid. We had skunk. And we didn't even call it skunk. We had, we had the strawberry we used to get from Santa Cruz. That was skunk weed. It was as skunky as it got, but it was the shape. The name, they called it strawberry because it was strawberry shaped buds.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that shit is stanky and awesome. And I'm all about it. The caryophyllines in combination with some of those volatile sulfurs.
Those nose burning
GMOs.
sulfurs. Oh yeah. I mean, we had cat piss too that was like ammonia.
That's lost, right?
For me, it is. I mean, the thing is with cat piss is the description of an aroma. And so my opinion is that there's 10 different people that had a cat piss and they were different cat pisses potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so their cat piss may still be around. But the one that I remember that was like straight nose burning ammonia, I have yet to see it. But Dave from Buttolero gave me some sour diesel when I was at Reggae on the River. We became good friends after that. And that sour diesel is the real cut. And I've been looking for real sour diesel for a long time.
How did he keep it going?
He's had it for 21 years.
Where? How?
He's in Mendocino.
Okay.
I mean, he's an amazing guy. We're talking about doing some fun projects together, but he kept it alive and he didn't share it with a lot of people. And I have some here to show you too. And it's the real deal when you squeeze it. If you know what sour smells like, you'll be like, yeah, that's the real sour. It also makes me feel like there's only one real sour. Because I've seen so many different versions of stuff, especially in the last year and a half, 2 years, that's really gassy. That's not it.
I think there was one original sour and it came from like an original chem and it broke into OG. And it's hard to hold on to because genes drift or you grow them bad or it gets sick. And you kind of have to keep pulling the crank on the slot machine and try to get 3 cherries again. Yeah. Like, I think the genes to make sour are in there. It's just like, how can we resurrect them again? Like,
well, so the next thing is for us to test it at my flora against sours that we already have. And I have a feeling that there's some truth to what you're saying in regards that we may already have it, but we're not able to make that plant express like he's making it express to get the sour.
Yeah.
We have like 7 different sours, I think, in tissue culture.
Yeah.
And out of those 7, I have yet to see one that expresses like his does, where it's like, oh yeah, I feel home. It's that sour. You squeeze it, you're like, smells like early 2000s sour diesel. What I love about sour, that it's citrusy. It's not just gas. It does have that gas. It does have like that, a little bit of that burnt tire, like latexy kind of like strong gas, but it has way more complexity because it has this citrus that basically backs it up and this funk.
It's like a lime rind to me.
It is. It's like that's a good description.
Versus like a sweet, like orange or orange juice or a lemon juice.
Or a lemon
it's
juice
like
or a Meyer lemon.
rind.
It's like lime rind. Or, there's lime
Bitter.
zest too, right? So there's lime. I mean, that's the thing about citrus. People think they categorize citrus all in this one thing, but really, if we start breaking down the aroma of citrus, I always love talking about this because as a chef, it's like there's so many different uses with citrus. You can use the juice. You can basically make a candy version of that smell. So like an orange candy or a lemon candy. We can go into the zest. We can go into the rind. Because, tangy, some of the tangies, you get that rindy orange, which I like. And so there's 20 different versions.
And the citruses are different, like the grapefruit, like in a squirt strain.
Oh, yeah. I love grapefruit too.
Oh, yeah. It's just different.
Soma's grapefruit. Soma had that New York City diesel that was like a big yielder and it was like straight grapefruit terps.
Yum.
Huge fan.
So I'm an unabashed tangy lover, squirt lover. I think it's a crowd favorite.
Yeah.
Forbidden fruit. Shout out Garden of Eden and Hayward.
Yeah.
They introduced me to the forbidden fruit. Shout back in the day. Shout out Sharif at Trees.
I like forbidden fruit. I like Tangy too at the right time. Tangy's kind of fallen off, but it was the most awarded cross for the longest time. In that early High Times America Cup, it was winning every time. DNA was getting on stage multiple times, whether it was for the flower or the extract. Yeah. Just killing it.
Yeah, I think like that's where it crosses over into fashion.
Right.
Some terps are not fashionable the way some sneakers aren't. Like some of our followers will not be caught dead in Asics.
Right.
They will not be caught dead smoking Jack. They can't afford the like hit to their social standing they think comes with it. And then there's other people that don't give a fuck. They just do wear the shoes that make them feel comfortable or the strains they like. I just like to have respect and space for both. I've grown squirt multiple years from Humboldt Seed Co., which is a Tangy back cross. And it's the first one that my friends all take all of it. Like it's like, because it actually smells like the soda squirt.
Yeah.
And I respect the pull. Like if your jar goes empty first, that's the jar.
Yeah, that's the jar test. That's what we do too. The jar test is always like, what's gone first?
Right.
And so I always have lots of jars. And that's really my test too, is like, what did I gravitate towards the most? Because whatever's the best is usually what I smoke the first, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I might go for other stuff, but I go for what the best stuff is. Like if I got some amazing Skittles, I might smoke through all that.
Yes.
But if I have friends come over, I might want to show them some other stuff too. Like that Super Silver from Flora Flame, that's a crowd favorite too.
You do the thing where you like have the house wine that you give out versus like the head stash. So you're like, let's save this for someone who really can appreciate it.
For sure. For sure.
And then you probably do the same thing where like if I finish a jar, that's notable.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of flower in our lives and we can pick and choose. And so like if I actually get to the bottom of your jar, I wanted to smoke it all despite having a bunch of stuff, like that goes on the like short list of like stuff I currently like,
Yeah. Or if my friends are asking for something that I had like a month or two later, and it's like, it's been gone for a month. No, I don't have that anymore. And I could talk to my buddy. He's got another batch coming down or whatever. SF Canada grows some amazing stuff.
They do.
I'm a big fan of all their work. I just did a tour with Grow World. We did a tour of the SF Canada facility with Chris.
Nice.
Yeah. And
Shout out Cannabis Chris.
Yeah. They grow a bunch of my genetics. We pheno hunt together, do a lot of fun stuff. So,
what lane are you sort of digging into, like a Minecraft miner who's on some diamonds, like going down, down, down?
I'm looking for something different. Obviously, right now the boxes, you got to check, you got to have color. It doesn't have to be black anymore. We've gone away from that, but you need color.
Like so 80% Oreo's black, or
I hate Oreo.
Yeah, we all do. I mean,
I hate Oreo.
But
it's one cross away from being good.
I know.
So all these things are. Purple Punch, I dislike it. It's one cross away from being amazing.
Just needed to put some tangy in there.
I mean, permanent marker crosses are great. I love those. I have several lanes that I'm going down, and basically what I'm creating is this big palette that I can pick from, because everybody likes different stuff depending on the area. I do stuff with Canna Organics and with House of Cultivar in Washington. Dope. And this, we're pheno hunting at House of Cultivar. I work with them. They pop a lot of seeds. Shout out to Jason Hutto. He is one of the best pheno hunters I've ever met in my life.
Crazy
He's
job.
a good friend. Yeah, does a crazy job. Really good with the plant and also being able to grow it well enough to make it express, which is the hardest part of the pheno hunting process. You have to be a good grower. If you're just growing them and you're just like, they're not going to be that different. But if you're actually putting the time in and you grow really good flower, then it's like, okay, this out of 20 different seeds, they're all slightly different, and that's part of the magic. I also am going into some wild stuff. We got Fort Collins Cough times Banana Skittles.
Okay.
We got Shoreline times Banana Skittles. I haven't released those yet, but we're pheno hunting.
Was that like a strawberry cough pheno? Fort Collins Cough?
No, the Fort Collins Cough is an NL5 haze.
Okay.
So kind of like the piff. There's a bunch of things. The NL5 haze has been around. There's a bunch of reiterations of NL5 haze. Fort Collins Cough is from Fort Collins, Colorado, and it is a spear-looking apical dominant plant that shoots up and just, the average plant grows like 2 inches a day. This thing will grow 4. Okay. And it just keeps growing. And you flip it into flower, and I had a 11-foot tall plant in my house when I was making seeds of it, and it was like 4 feet wide, 11 feet tall,
like a true Christmas tree, like
a true one. Yeah. It was like what is it? Not Scooby-Doo. It's a Charlie Brown Christmas tree.
Yeah. I think with New York going legal, the piff wave has really ticked up a notch. People want to see piff. They want to walk into a store and buy their old piff.
I got it in tissue culture. Diesel. We got the Cuban black in tissue culture. We've got the Fort Collins. We got a bunch of New York favorites. But yeah, the piff, I think, I love the piff. I love the piff because I'm a flavor guy. I like the effect too, because it's like I wouldn't say it's a diet haze, but it's a more mellow haze.
Good.
And in a good way, right? Where I can smoke a whole joint of it. It's super silver. I like sharing joints of it. But if it's the middle of the day and I smoke a whole joint of super silver, I may want to change my plans for the day. Or whatever.
Dude.
Whereas piff, I can stay on task. It keeps me kind of level-headed. If you smoke extract made from piff too, which I got to do, it's super special too. But that was my workout one where I just we got this little dipper and I go
Do you have
in.
a lighter?
Oh yeah.
I was just in New York and I rolled up a J of piff haze at a legal store and smoked it. And I won't tell where. But I was not ready to go from like inside a basement smoking piff haze to back onto the streets of Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
Chelsea, like full sativa, like heart palpitations. Like, what the fuck are we doing next? Like, what was the plan? Like, I have made a terrible mistake.
So piff is an interesting one because I feel if you harvest it a little bit early, it's a little more mellow and a little more floral, and it's got its own thing going on flavor-wise.
Yeah.
It does have that terpenoline, limonene kind of haze-ish characteristic.
Okay.
But it also has like this unique, like it's almost floral, incensey, and really good piff. I feel like it burns down to the roach and it tastes even better when you get down to the roach. It's like one of those ones that just keeps getting better and better and better in flavor.
Do you think like some of these unworked genetics from 40 years ago can stand up to the new? Because I see the development that's happened between the plant structure and the yield and how that grew versus like the hot rods of today.
I honestly think all this stuff. So Dave from Buddalero, he's on a mission to bring back old and unique genetics and different stuff. And he's going to do God's work. And in ways that a lot of people wouldn't even understand, but like to go in and hunt through landrace genetics, it takes a lot of work, and you're going to get a lot of bad stuff to find the good stuff.
Yeah, you'd be reselecting.
You're reselecting. You're doing a lot of the original work all over again. That got us to the point where we're at, and I love that. It has a place. He has some African haze that's just super special,
right?
And I have some of that too. And then he has some of these pearls from this landrace African that's just, it doesn't even smell amazing. It looks terrible, but the high from it, just special. And it lifts you up nice and gently for about 15 minutes where it creeps up on you. It's not like the creeper where you don't feel it. You feel it, but it keeps getting you more high for about 15 minutes and then you mellow off.
Good.
And that's when I talk about going back to breeding for effects. It's like that's what gets me excited. So now we have some different effects. We've got the white thorn rose, right? So that is I call that feel good weed.
Agree.
And Dave that passed away, I don't know if you knew Dave Mesfer, damn it, Dave, damn it.
Okay.
From Seattle. He was with Canacon.
Okay.
And also Hempfest. He was one of those.
He's legendary.
He's legendary.
I heard, quote, he bought a house with the Canacon money. Like he did good with it.
He did really good with it. He was driving around an orange truck for the longest time and he did really well and he put on an amazing event. And, with Hempfest too, like he's the one who got me to go to Hempfest. He took photographs of me when I was in High Times for the first time.
Yeah.
And so when I was in publications, he did that in 2012 after I'd won the cup in Amsterdam. And really nice guy. We became really good friends, passed away on 420, but he had the Blue 13, and that was Blueberry Haze times Louis the 13th from Kevin Jodry.
That's going to kill.
Shout out to Kevin Jodry.
Shout out, Kevin.
The same exact effect, as White Thorn Rose.
Okay. Just from a different vector.
It's green, White Thorn Rose is purple, but they have the same, makes you feel good. Like it was eerie smoking them and kind of being one of the only people besides Carrie Boyder from Montana, who's a ganjier. We had both had the experience that we met at Dave's memorial service, and both of us had the same thing. We realized we weren't crazy, that we've got the same effect. And that's kind of part of what made me want to breed for effect, because that stuff is special. And I feel like most people, I'd say the average person in the United States, maybe in the world, if they were to experience that, they would be like, I really like weed. I really like cannabis because it makes you feel good. It's not overly strong.
Yeah.
It's not sedative. It's not narcotic. So it's neither one of these sides of the spectrum. It's somewhere in the middle and it makes you feel amazing. And I feel like as a chef, it's what I want to give people. It's like, this is what I want you to try because it makes you feel so good. So even if you're a lightweight or you're somebody who doesn't really think you like cannabis, but you're kind of curious about what your friends are doing, that's the one. And we need a little bit more of that, because we have so much of everything, right? So it's like we're in this world of instant gratification. There's 30 million gelatos. We have this handful of haze and sativas, Blue Dream. I like Blue Dream. We have the strawberry cough. I like strawberry cough too.
Same. I got a jar at home.
Yeah, Kyle came on the show, gave me a jar, and yeah, we
How
smoked
was
on
it?
the show. It was really good. It's pretty strong, right? It's strong in a good way, but yeah, it's strong. And we smoked it on the show, and it was like, yeah, it was good.
My favorite effect strain right now might be the Canna Country 26.
Nice.
It's purple, and it reminds me of an old Afgoo
Yeah,
or an Afgooey.
I love Old Afgooey, and the Old Afgooey wasn't the terpiest. It was like a hash strain, but it was sweet on the nose, but it was the most frostiest, where you look fake.
Yeah, and like it doesn't get super dense or chunky.
Yeah.
Like it's not checking some box, but it's winning the race because of the effect.
Yeah.
Whereas like I have a dark rainbow at the house from Happy Trails, and it's like a 37%er that smells and looks great. But my God, if I don't get a panic attack every time I smoke it.
So it's funny because coffin candy, I feel like, is 37%. And as far as effect, it's strong, but it like makes my eyes super tight. And it makes me it's the narcotic effect, right? In a good way. But like, yeah, those 37%ers, some of them can be like almost too much sometimes.
Yeah. And like sometimes I want that. I'm playing like Helldivers 2 with my buddies.
Yep.
And I have like kids are asleep, and I don't mind getting my pulse up or taking a mental inventory of like all my current enemies or whatever, you know, but like you're like I'm wigging out and it's fine. But in general, I think people want euphoria. They don't want dysphoria. They want to feel good. They don't want to feel bad.
Well,
even the animal face can get right on top of a newbie that you have on the desk.
Oh,
there.
yeah.
I mean, it's called Animal Face. It's from Face Off OG.
Yeah.
Like Fletch doesn't lie. Like it's a ripper.
Yeah, but I mean, it's something for everybody. It's so subjective to the individual because sometimes people want that stimulant to calm them down.
Yeah.
And sometimes people want that narcotic to make them feel normal. You know, it's so funny because it's so individualized.
Coming at it.
And that's why doctors have such a hard time with it. It's like they don't know what to recommend. They tell someone they should try this, and then, you know, there's no standard effect. It's so complicated. And for them to wrap their head around plant medicine, for the most part, if they're in Western medicine, it's really difficult.
I think that's how I discovered strains. Was the first one was for me was Blue Dream. You know, I was on the beat starting in 2009, and I came into it definitely not believing that strains existed, because I'd go to your dealer and you'd have like two kinds, right? Like lavender and OG.
Yeah.
And you can take it or leave it. You have it or what. But they said, you know, strains are a real thing. They have different effects. I'm like, get out of here. You know, like go on. And BPCC had like actual strain cards back in the day.
Totally.
Baseball cards, and Blue Dream was on one, and it promised that 50-50 hybrid effect. And it, you know, people were using it for anti-anxiety. And back then I definitely had anxiety. Yeah. And I sought that out, and it worked. And I was like, well, son of a bitch, you know, like this is my medicine for my anxiety.
Those playing cards were awesome.
Remember that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So Berkeley Patients Care Collective off Telegraph Avenue.
David Bowers.
Yeah. So there was Eric and Dave.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, people have heard my Blue Dream Nightmare story. Like I called it the Blue Night. Why we still referred it to as the Blue Nightmare, because one year I had harvested a bunch, and Eric and Dave had promised to buy 5 pounds of it.
Okay.
And this is the year that Blue Dream got cultivated by everybody, but I grew the best Blue Dream at the time. And my friends can all attest to it being the best. It was sticky.
Nice.
And it was chunky. And the pounds of it, you'd open it up and you'd be like, wow, this is amazing. And Blue Dream's not hard strain to grow anyway.
No.
It's very easy to grow.
It's so fun.
So come, you know, Christmas time, I'm hoping to buy gifts for everybody, pay all my bills. I just harvested this amazing flower. I bring my 5 pounds in there, right? And I put it on the table, and I'm like, what's up? And he's like, I got some bad news. And so he's like, unfortunately, I can't pay 32 for this. We bought some for 18, and I'm not going to be able to buy those 5 pounds.
Oh.
And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Can I see what they look like? Can I see what you bought for 18? Because
nice.
I can't imagine that it's going to be that good.
Yeah.
Comes out, it was actually for 18 was really good.
Yeah.
It wasn't as good as what I had, but for half price, I mean, it's hard to argue. So basically we had to borrow money from my parents.
Knife in the heart.
And held it. I still got my money for the flower, but it wasn't until like way after Christmas. You started getting money in January and February. But, you know, those are the kind of stories that make you.
I feel like this year, that's Gushmints. everyone grew a fuck ton of PCG gush mints.
Well, so gush mints, the reason they grew gush, and the reason people grow gush mints is because it comes out really good in greenhouse or outdoor, right? Especially
I've seen
greenhouse.
hedgerows of it. Like,
there's thousands and thousands, but it beasts out, and it's quality. It's frosty. It's covered in trichomes. The structure's good. Some people are trying to pass it off as indoor. It's what happened with Blue Dream, where people didn't want Blue Dream, so they changed the name to something else. It's Blue Lagoon, and it's like, what the fuck is Blue Lagoon?
Yeah,
but like the same thing is happening with gush mints. They're like, no, this is Kush mints. I'm like, no, this is gush mints.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's like, and it tastes good too. It's another one that actually tastes good when you smoke it, and so it kind of checks the box. It's like the new Blue Dream.
It's going to go different effect, but it's what the market wants, and it's a real great exemplar of what we've seen now. Is that like cannabis strains have life cycles?
Yeah,
they have like a beginning. Like they get born, they get taken up. Someone wins an award. The interest ratchets up. It hits a peak where it's being overproduced, and the price falls, and the quality slips, and fashion moves on.
Right.
And then it goes down, down, down. And it either fully peters out to where we get 0 page views on that strain for the last month. Like there's literally no one in the world that even fucking Googled that strain.
Right.
Or it has another cycle, or it becomes like a classic, like a Jimi Hendrix.
Becomes a classic. Yeah. I mean, so shout out to Seed Junkie for wedding cake and ice cream cake, but those plants had their day. The wedding cake really had its day. It was super popular. And same thing with the ice cream cake.
Facts.
And I still like ice cream cake.
Yeah.
Don't argue with me on that, people.
No.
It's good. Ice cream cake is, it got overproduced.
But because it was good.
Yeah, but because it was, especially because it was good. Not because it yielded or anything else, even though it yields fine. It's because it smoked good and it smelled like ice cream. When you opened up the bags of, or the jars of it, it really smelled like ice cream.
Creamy dessert, sweet,
and the extracts
vanilla.
Taste just like that too. Yes. It's like one of those ones you could pair with desserts. It's so good.
I recall like all the cakes score high on the arousing thing on Leafly. People are using them on date night and they're getting it on wedding cake and ice cream cake. And one other thing we've seen is like, remember when COVID happened and they'd be like, oh, a new variant came out. And at first it's like 1% of all samples. And then it's like 40%. And then it's like 50%. And the variant like crowds out the competition.
Right.
I see that happening with strains. Like it emerges and it's 1% of the market. And then the next year it's 10. And the next year it's like a good 50.
Yeah.
And we are just in successive waves of newly fit strains colonizing vast, vast chunks of the market, like outsized chunks. And there's no reason to think it would be equal 1,000 strains. Everyone gets 1,000, like 1/1000th of the market. No, one strain gets 40% of the market and the other 9,000 fight over the remaining 60.
Dude, RS11 and Zope had a huge foothold for the longest time.
It's still going.
It's still going.
East. It's moving east.
For sure. It's moving east. And people don't want to hear RS11 right now. And I love RS11. I like Zope a lot too. But like,
Maryland smoking black Zope this week. Maryland.
Awesome.
Legal Maryland.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for them.
That's great.
Like they are like when you drop a cell phone in the bush.
Yeah.
And they go from like nothing to like the newest shit. Right. And like, you got to watch out for those populations because they take things up intuitively without the baggage.
Yeah.
And then they do revolutionary, sort of heretical things that actually are end up the new things.
Right.
We're so precious with our OGs over here. They're going to flip black Zope into like black maple and we'll be smoking West Coast will be smoking East Coast maple Zope next year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really wild. So for our viewers that don't know exactly what Leafly is or how Leafly works, you want to explain that?
Yeah, I mean, Leafly's been around for 12 years. It's got like 9,000 strains in the database. Leafly's the like internet's #1 weed source. And people are in the parking lot hooking up from their dealer, looking up coffin candy and seeing if the picture matches and the smell matches. They're using the site for validation on the illicit market. There's like 8,000 stores, menus on Leafly now, and you can get pickup and delivery. So in Canada, Uber Eats and Leafly will bring you a burrito and a joint.
Amazing.
Yeah, and they just turned on another province up there. And so that like Leafly's got to put new strains in the database every day as like it's like heartbeat, because it started with the guy who loved weed so much that he started a spreadsheet. And you know what that's like to start putting weed in a spreadsheet. You got to love it a lot and be pretty dorky about it to like start down that road. But once you do, you know, it like they ended up with a big competitive advantage. The strains are a big moat for them. And it's basically what the universe wants this company to do. Like strain breeders don't go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office. They don't go to the California Secretary of State. They don't spend $5 million pulling a patent. They just release it into the market, get it on Leafly, and like fight about it in the comments. And honestly, the guy that pushes it the hardest and sells the most wins the name.
Yeah.
You know, and there's no guild that is saying, oh, you can't use this name, it's already been taken. So our job is to wade in there every day and disambiguate and be like, actually, there's two sherbet hazes. One's a gelato haze and one's like a sunset sherbet haze. They're both being called sherbet haze. They're grown by different people. They're actually very similar, but that's what's going on there. Like no one's wrong. It's just people need to know what's going on. And so this year we are going to put, you know, again, 1,000 strains in the database. That's about 5 a day. And then we do 12 to 15 monthly news stories that are really laser focused now on strains and products.
Yeah.
It's an undiscovered country. It's the final frontier. I've been doing this for 15 years, and the law side seems more inevitable than ever. We're at like 28 legalization states, or now 25, or you can lose track. It's happening so fast, and 40 something medical. Like I'm less interested in like the turn of a screw around a legislature. Like normal outlets write about weed laws now. What's wide open is digging into the cultivars, the genetics, the breeders, their stories.
Mm-hmm.
My like operating thesis is that like there's a universe in every nug. Like you can use it like a keyhole. Yeah. And the more you look in and through it, you will see the strain genetics, the breeder, how it was grown, where it was grown, why it was grown, where it fits into why we're growing what we're growing, and the whole culture and all of history.
Yeah.
Like back to like the ships coming over.
Well, and the value of this is so huge from if you look at the future of it, right? So over time, what happens is the amount of data that you collect can be used for breeding and creating these huge trees of data, you know, and we want to know where it came from. 50 years from now, yeah, I mean, you guys are setting the bar for the data that will be collected 50 years from now and how we can compare and contrast and look at what was popular now. And you guys collect data on top of all this stuff. You guys have algorithms and
I get to see like which states are smoking what and like in what order. And you can see strains move from west to east across the country.
Wow.
And you can see them go from like 0 page views to like a top 100 in the country, like a Billboard music charts.
Well, and for predicting trends, there's nothing better than collecting data points to predict trends.
Yeah, and if you can combine it with smoking everything you can get your hands on, you can really be of value to this audience. And that's like, I'm the head of brand experience over there / senior editor. They rely on me to like serve this audience and stay close to the plant. And that means like growing it. It means making seeds. It means I did the harvest book with Ed, Marijuana Harvest in 2016. It means walking the fields. I'll be headed back up to Humboldt the first week of October, judging in these contests, getting your hands really dirty with it. And so you can tell a story that gets the audience in the same room with the best of the best.
Yeah.
And then the next layer on that for me is doing these experiential things. So SF Weed Week in April, SF Hash Week in July, and I'm going to do a seed show in December. It's like I'm so fed up with people not being able to get what they want after reading about it that I'm like, fine, just come over here. You meet Moon Valley. Moon Valley is great at growing living soil. You should learn about living soil. You all right? Like buy this pre-roll now. It just won the Emerald Cup. It's like putting their hands together, being a connective tissue.
I love it. And your events are amazing. SF Weed Week was great. I'm glad I was able to be a part of it.
Thanks for turning up.
Absolutely. I mean,
like last minute, super positive.
It was great. It was great. And I think you've really picked a lane that could use improving. A lot of people jump in the lane where everyone else is in that's popular.
Mm-hmm.
Event planning, is something that we need more of, and not even more of, we need more good events. It's really difficult to organize something that lasts a week, let alone a day.
Dude.
I can't even imagine, and it's a lot of work. And so really impressive.
Thanks. It was like doing a magazine where you have 12 stories, you got to land at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of planning, but every one of those drops is a breeder with a story and a strain with a story. And we're putting it in a place that has a story. And so programming a series of them that way was possible. And our big breakthrough, and I encourage anybody to do this, is just like center the plant. Like find a subject matter expert that knows everything about what's going on right now and have them like pick your lineup. We saw stuff, people do cannabis bingo and cannabis fashion, and weed has this weird tendency to make people digress, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to take your eye off the plant when you're being like trying to serve it. You're like, oh, we're talking about OSHA now. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe, but the Trobs just came out. Like, how did they even get a Tom Hill haze to put with the GDP, to put with the Xeno? Mm-hmm. And so, those stories centering the plant and having really, really, really good weed or really, really good hash at the center of your weed or hash festival made it way easier because then you just build out from around it. Kalia and Nasha and these other hash makers they have audiences akin to indie rock bands.
Right.
And so they're your headliners.
Yeah.
And you can make a poster and put them on it. And a normie might be like, what's Kalia and Nasha? But a Wook is like, oh yeah, this is going to be the best week of all time.
Totally.
And it's literally me being like, if this is the best I could find, let me bring this together. One other thing was like, you couldn't pay to be on the poster, like a headliner. It was like when they program outside lands, you don't get to pay to be on the stage. Like you just have to be a great musician. Like Chappell Roan's having a moment. Yeah. Totally. You pay Chappell Roan. Yeah. And so you can't like pay to get on our slate. You have to earn it and show up on the radar. And so that putting that at the center, everything else is kind of like rapidly assembles underneath because people are like, oh, I want to be at that. I want to stand next to that.
Yeah.
And so like I encourage everyone to just like, don't forget if you want to be original, don't forget the origin here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing an event October 2nd, Dabad Do with Mila. We got Sam from Rosentech is co-sponsoring the event with me. Cannabis Chris is going to be the host.
Where?
The MC. Well, I was going to talk to you about the location that you got. It's chronic culture is great, but it doesn't have as many people as I'd like.
Yeah.
To be able to attend, and something like the Dabad Do, we allow for free entries. So if you give us an entry, we'll limit it to like 30 per category. You get a ticket, and so I'd like to have an event where we can have 150 to 200 people, and you get judges kits, and we're going to do T-shirts, and obviously Sam is with Focus V, and they've got the Focus V, and we've got Rosentech.
Shout out Rosentech, man.
Yeah, and we're going to get some badass extract artists out there. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's the 10-year anniversary of Dabad Do.
Right, which had gone all around the world, hasn't it? Was it in Barcelona?
Barcelona, yeah. Nikki, Dougie, and I did the 2014 Dabad Do in the Bay Area. And it's touched so many people's lives. And it's been a lot of fun. I've gotten to a bunch of Dabad Do's in my life, and being able to contribute that with Sam, I think Mila is like family for both of us. She's just a really special person.
Sure. So bring her out here.
Her and I almost died together, on a boat in the Bay Area. I took her sailing with my friend.
Oh God.
We hit another boat. We were in the Bay,
God. What?
Yeah, you got to hear the story from Mila. It's even better because it's so exciting. But yeah, we went out on the Bay and we went sailing out of Sausalito. It was like the Gilligan's Island day where it was like beautiful, and then it got stormy on us a little bit, and the winds picked up. And the Bay, when the winds pick up, it can be crazy out there.
Yeah.
2 boats, both decided to start turning the same direction, and boom, hit each other in the Bay. Yeah, pretty wild. But we both lived.
And you went in the water.
No, we did not go in the water.
Okay.
Nothing. No. We didn't go in the water. Right. It wasn't that crazy.
Are you afraid of sharks? Shit.
I'm not afraid of sharks at all in the Bay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, and I don't think you need to be afraid of sharks in the Bay. There's sharks in the Bay, but like, I'm not afraid. I I would be more afraid of the cold than I would be of the sharks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the cold will kill you in an hour, right?
I do cold plunging and I could handle it, but it's still cold. That's still like, especially for long periods of time. I mean, some people might pass out after 5-10 minutes. And other people, they might make it an hour. And some people might get hypothermia, and other people, they just can handle it.
Where are you going to do Dabad Do?
We are looking for a spot. We're looking for a spot right now. And I was going to I was going to hit you up after the show, ask you if you want to be involved.
I'd love to.
So yeah, and it's going to be a fun event. And I mean, it's super, I feel like it's kickback and simple. It's coming up in like a month and a half.
Yeah.
So
yeah, hash since 2014 has had a lifetime happen to it. 10 years, right?
Yep.
From like open blasting with butane and just basically like bubble hash.
Curling irons.
Yeah. And then curling irons and now this tech, like we're reporting on the static tech people.
So static is really, really cool. I get excited about static. Full melt static is so amazing and so good and so many terps. And I love it because if you're using water, there's water soluble terpenes that you lose, right?
Yeah.
And anytime it's going through a process, whether it's CO2 or BHO, you're changing the chemical composition of it slightly.
Yeah.
Whereas sift, you are not. And I love smoking good sift. It's just amazing. There's something special.
How do you smoke it? Because it's you got to keep it cold and then you have to kind of press it. Okay, you do it. Yeah, right off there. God, what was that like? That sounds amazing.
It is. It's amazing. And, so I remember the first time I got scissor hash back in the day.
Yep.
And static reminds me a lot of scissor hash, like good static,
Yay.
So, I mean, some of the terps that we used to get off the scissor hash was the best. And like we used to trim for free. All our friends, we trim for each other. We go over to somebody's house. We never charged them by the hour to trim. Maybe you get some weed or whatever, but like back in the mid 90s, it wasn't like that. We'd hang out and we loved weed. We loved trimming for each other.
Same.
And when we harvested, we needed help. I needed help. So I would, there was times we run trim crews out of my house. My wife would manage. If I was there and I had a water plant, she would run the trim crew. And, and it evolved more into a trim crew that got paid. But in the beginning, it was like we used to watch in living color when it came on DVD. That was what we watched over and over. In fact, I think I've saved those because it's so nostalgic, the DVDs, and they have resin on them still.
I must have been like 2012 when I got the first really high-end hash from Spark that like liquefied when you applied heat, and so it ran.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a CO2 or what it was, but
in 2012.
Yeah.
And so I used to sell in 2012. I sold CO2 to Spark.
I wanted to say like I hit that. The only way I could find a way to hit that shit was hot knifing it into a cup.
So did it look like peanut butter? It was like more of like a yellowish peanut butter consistency.
Yeah, very light.
So I used to sell that to Spark. And so my friends in Fresno, they basically bought this Eden Labs extraction machine, and it's like this rocket ship, right? And they're like, we're going to make hella money. And so they made it, and they couldn't sell it to save their lives. And so I was already selling flour to Spark. And so I started bringing in jars, and they paid $20 a gram for it back in 2012.
I bought it retail for you.
It's not what people would like to see today, but at the time it was great. I believe they used it in edibles and other things as well. And CO2 was a cleaner BHO product, right? That's how people viewed it.
Yeah. I mean, we had bubble and then there was that. And this is, again, now 12 years ago. And so we're from a generation that like hot knifed. Like I
love hot knives.
Like I was in Mazatlan and I tried to put it in a local pipe with the titties on the pipe, and it just ran right through. It was like gone. It just got over my mouth, And I was like, I'm gonna have to hot knife this. This is before the internet, really. So you couldn't even Google like how to hot knife. You just had to like give it a go.
Yeah, for sure.
And like catching it in the cup and then sipping the cup. And
is that how you did it? We used to use the tubes for the paper towels. That was the hot knife, and you would put them together and then kind of push them in a little bit, not really in, but like enough to where the person could take the hit. And that
sounds better because we were sipping from the cup. Yeah,
they were. Yeah, you get a big hot knife hit, and it was like taking a hot dab, right? But with hash, typically that wasn't the same quality as what you would dab, and it would wreck your throat. Yeah. You would cough. Sometimes, no matter what, you would cough.
People don't even know.
Yeah.
Now we have live rosin carts, all in ones that are superb.
So I love half-gram rosin carts. I don't like 1 gram. I feel like half gram because by the time you get to the half gram, it's about to be not as good.
Okay.
And
yeah.
so
At room temperature and everything else.
2-gram carts is crazy because they're super popular right now. My buddy was saying 2-gram carts are the new thing and everybody wants them. And I'm like, how could that be? Because when you get done with the gram, it's going to be shit. By the time you get to the end of 2 grams, I won't even smoke it. I'll give it to somebody. I would never.
I guess they're just going to do whatever they could think of.
And
We
some
were
people
also
just don't
seeing the
care.
2 carts or the 3 carts or the
Right.
4 carts and one whole thing. So you can just stick that whole thing
Monster
in your
hits. And
face.
I mean, innovation though, right? Like you got to come out with
Try. Yeah.
90 things to get 10 good ones or
Yeah.
99 to get one good one sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, fine. No scruples. Show us what you like. Tell us how it goes, you know?
Well, and I'm excited about cryo technology. I think for trimming, drying, and curing, there's a couple companies we're about to have on our show. And I think, well, I'm excited for the potential of it. So far, I've been disappointed, but
I know I have trouble. Like,
I don't want to smoke astronaut ice cream, right?
Yeah.
But where it's like the bud looks big and beautiful and it like super light and it looks like it's still on the plant almost.
Dude, we're just not there yet.
We potentially will be, but there's a lot of things that happen in that drying process and the curing process that need to be mitigated for you to get good flower. And
I'm not even sure what's happening. Like there needs to be PhDs written about like what's happening in your chlorophyll levels versus your water versus the resin. Cause like we're seeing with drying and curing that like some things are degrading, some bad things are degrading.
Right.
And then eventually enough of them degrade that the good things kind of stand out.
Well, and I think what happens with the plant is that when you are going through the curing phase, the stomata has to stay open to keep the moisture from, you want to release the moisture from the plant. So the stomata has to stay open, right? And CO2 will lock the stomata up. And so with the terplocks, which we are both huge fans of, we both collaborate with terplocks, their benefit is that when you put them in there, the lining absorbs the CO2, preventing the stomata from closing, allowing the moisture to leak out of the plant or into the bag. Whereas you don't have to burp it. For the longest time you burp it, it gets rid of excess CO2, all that stuff.
Yeah. And like the air somehow keeps things going. Growers talk about how oxygen's like salt. You want like you cook with a little of it. Too much, bad, but you need it. And have you've seen this where like you get a jar and it's not great, but you flushed it by opening it and trying it, like, and then you put it away for a while and it cures into a good spot and you open it again and you're like, oh, there it is.
Totally.
And
happens
now
all the time.
I know, and it feels very unnerving because it's hard to write off stuff that's just not cured yet. It might be the best. The grower's so excited to give it to you, but it needs 2 weeks.
That happens a lot for me too. I get stuff when it's super fresh. It happened the other day with some Skittles and they look like the most amazing Skittles. And like I smoked it and the same cured out stuff normally has like this amazing white ash, oil ring, tastes like cantaloupe a little bit. It's like on the fruit, they harvest it really early. So it's not the gassy side of Skittles. It's more like candy cantaloupe terps. And when I love it, but then this stuff didn't have it and it was like kind of let down. It was so fresh, but you wait 2 weeks, good to go. Burns clean, all of that. I'm a huge terplock fan. Yeah.
And I don't fully know why. I know there needs to be PhDs where they like go and have like the control group, stomata's closed because they flash it,
Well, so Jack from Terplock, he's huge into R&D. And so he's done a lot of stuff. I love the work that they're doing. They're featured in my book, but I got rid of my jars. And the thing is I'm one of those trust but verify sort of people. With Terplock, I was like a disbeliever. I was like, no, Mylar, oh, dude, it's just another
it's a tough
thicker
thing to believe.
Well, it was a hard sell for me because I've been using Mylars forever. Not a fan. I prefer my glass jars. And so over the last couple of years, I've gotten rid of not even a couple of years, but in the last year, pretty much my glass jar collection has gone way down. I put stuff in terplocks. I do like jars. Sometimes I put my terplocks in jars so they don't get smashed.
Yep.
Because that's the one thing I don't like about the bag is you can put it in your pocket and it just...
We still don't know what's going on with a good old fashioned wide mouth like ball jar.
Yeah.
Because it's something.
I love looking at it. And, there's the Sea Vault too. I think those are cool, but there's something special about glass mason jars. And maybe it's just nostalgic because of our age too, where it's like.
No, I think it cures, like it got, to me, and maybe though science will disprove us wrong, but like it gets better when you get it on glass and in a ball jar and cure it versus it staying in the turkey bag.
Yeah. Well, turkey bag, yes. Terp lock, I think, is better.
I know. That's the word. I mean, I came at it as like my bag as like a reporter. I'm getting hundreds of samples a year.
Yeah.
And I never have enough bags. I'm like wadding up paper with nugs in them that I've written on the paper just because people are handing me stuff.
Yeah.
Or I would get a bag that was inappropriate, like a Ziploc baggie or an all black one where you had to write on with like a silver Sharpie. Who's walking around with like a silver Sharpie?
Luke Scarmazzo.
Yeah. And so I had these reporters' notebooks and I knew what fields I need to report. And I also care a lot about terps. I have a joke Facebook group called the Terp Conservancy, like the Nature Conservancy. And it's like no terp left behind. It drives me crazy when I smell terps because that's our money and our time and our water and our nutrients and all this effort, just like off-gassing in a room from a bag that like someone carelessly left open, you know?
Right.
I even in stores, like if I'm smelling terps in a medium hot store, I'm mad because like that's the stuff in the thing.
It's the biggest problem with the rec market, in my opinion.
What's going on with Colorado? What was up with those pop top jars they were using that just didn't even seal? You know what I'm talking about? Like the medical bottles.
Oh, dude.
And they're at like 5,000 feet and 30% humidity.
With the driest place.
And I'm like, brother.
Yeah, well, you know, and then Washington's the most humid place, or, you know, as far as it's the polar opposite. They've actually dialed in their packaging. I feel like they've done a lot better job. But yeah, dude, like, but it's so critical. Like, it's like you spend all this time and then to just fuck it up at the very end. But also, I have a problem with the way flowers being brought to market where sometimes the consumer doesn't get it for 6 months. That sucks.
Fucked up.
You know what I mean? And also it takes, you know, they deliver it in the middle of summer in an unrefrigerated truck. And then the dispensary doesn't have refrigeration. And so even if it's only 2 weeks old, it's been exposed to this hot temperature for a few days here. It's not going to be as good, right? Every little thing, it's like a piece of a pie where you're at 100%. You take something away from that pie every time you fuck it up. Just like when you're growing in that 70-day of flower, every little mistake takes away from that pie.
I've been there.
Sometimes it's 1%, sometimes it's 2%, sometimes it's 50%.
Yeah, if you miss a day and it just turns like a Z and turns on you.
Dude, yeah, one day. Because that's like a life in a human year, right? Like for the plant, one day is the equivalent. Downhill. You can go downhill. You can one day can be catastrophe.
I do like how, because it's an agricultural product, it has a peak. You're holding something that isn't forever. Ostensibly, I mean, you can put some of these hashes away for years. But in general, if you get something great, you get a good batch from a grower at its prime, you're just seeing a view from a mountaintop that's not guaranteed the next time.
Right.
The weed gets old, the plant gets sick, the grower cuts a corner. It's never stable. Like the really good stuff, like holding on to consistency month after month is probably like the hardest thing. And that's what keeps it ever exciting to me, is like, it's ultimately like, it's not SOP-able as, I mean, you can have SOPs, but it's still life. And so it's squirreling out from underneath your SOPs and fucking with you. And the end product can't be like that as locked in forever.
And there's ways you can preserve it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you can have cold temperatures, you know, below 60 degrees if you really want to go for it. And you'll maintain the quality, and terp lock bags or even jars or whatever.
Yeah.
But like maintaining it in a cold environment, it'll stay fresher a lot longer. I know guys that, you know, some of these guys that don't even trim it, they'll put it in bins. And then right when they sell it is when they trim it. They keep it in these cold rooms in totes or in, you know, clear plastic containers. And so they can look at it all the time. But I like that a lot too, because I feel like those sugar leaves protect the flower.
They do.
House of Cultivar, shout out.
And they're like their own innate bovedas. Like if it gets wetter, the sugar leaf sucks up the water.
Right.
And if it starts to dry out, the sugar leaf gives up the water. Yeah. And the bud stays in there.
But I believe it's part of a longer cure too. So like as you know, we have the stem, and the stem is where a lot of that moisture, because of the density of the stem, a lot of that moisture holds on to into the stem longer than the actual flower. And then if you have sugar leaves on there, and what happens with the cure is you may have the perfectly dried bud where it snaps, but there's still moisture in that stem. And if you do it in those bins, it'll slowly go through the bud go into the leaf, and then you have a
it's like an
perfectly cured
outlet.
product.
It's an outlet, right?
Exactly. It buffers it a little bit, right? It buffers that moisture.
I've definitely chopped off a bunch of leaves when I've harvested and not, and I'm on team not. I just kind of chop and hang and let the plant live and breathe and expire versus make a bunch of cuts all over it.
Well,
that's just where I'm at as a home grower who's trying not to try so hard. And I think like in my heart that like oftentimes doing less is the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my personal back in the day, because for one reason I was like lazy with my own personal, but I put it in mason jars on the stem. I would, obviously we put it in totes, burp it out, and then they would go in jars. And other people's, the stuff that was for sale would get trimmed perfectly. And then my stuff, it would go in jars with leaves on it.
Yeah, farm cut.
Yeah. And I love that. I still love that. And finger trim, we'd finger trim it,
Yeah, just boop, beep, beep.
Oh yeah.
Meditative.
Yeah, for sure. Before that, we used to trim wet.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing,
I know. And everyone's got a reason.
Yeah.
But my best results have been doing less and dry trimming.
Yeah.
And I got no problem doing a little trimming, a pound here and there. It's meditative, keeps you in contact with the plant. You know how some cultivars are a delight to trim and other are a nightmare. And that satisfaction of like getting deep down and snipping like a water leaf right at the bottom of it and like not hurting the rest of the plant and having this big pile that you're like, how did we even get all that? Because you just did this little bit every day and you kept your head down. It's like such a good metaphor. Yeah. Make precise cuts. Don't look at everything. Just take it one day at a time. Take the bits.
When you're teaching people how to trim, I always remember this because what I would do is if there was new people in the room, I would trim a gram up, put it on the table. I'd say you need to do one of those every minute and you'll have a pound. So basically in 454 minutes, you'll have done a pound.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's usually a day, right? If you can get through it.
A day. I mean, I know trimmers that trim 2 pounds a day, now 5 pounds a day, using the brush tech, finger trimming and brush tech if you do it. But that requires the right kind of flower and the right kind of node spacing. You want good node spacing with very little leaf. And then those trim brushes are amazing.
You're a believer?
So that's another one. I was like, this is stupid, right? For the longest time, this is stupid. And then this has happened throughout my whole life in this industry. I'm like, this is stupid, or I don't like this. Or I'm so over that way of thinking. But with the trim brush, I was like, oh, this thing looks like a barbecue baster brush.
It's going to knock the trichomes, isn't it?
And it's going to knock the trichomes. That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, I think most people think that. It's very like it, but it's how it works is you have to use the right temperature and humidity. So if you're at 60 and you go for 10 days at 60 and then your room, you have, you can go even like 50 for the first day or whatever. Some people do different, but 60% humidity, 60 degrees, where the trichomes are pliable, but they're not going to snap off.
Okay.
But it's not so hot that it's taking away from the terps.
Yeah.
Or affecting the flavor negatively. And what happens is you get the leaves that they become brittle. Right. And so if you don't have a lot of leaf, it makes it a lot easier for either finger trimming or using the trim brush, the orange bristles with the white handle.
Yeah.
Cut that big handle off so you get this little thing in your hand. And you can really, it becomes really meditative if you do it right, because there's a specific motion you can go back and forth where you're spinning this stem with one finger and going across, and it gives you the best shape. I feel like if you have trimmers, they're not able to snip the tops off or round the buds. You're really getting in there and doing a good job. And you can do 4 to 5 pounds a day like that if you grow the right flower.
Okay. Because I've definitely been in the dry room where like it's dry. And if you just even look at the goddamn plant wrong, you can see little trichomes like floating off in the air. Like they're ready to like
a lot of it has to do with temperature and humidity.
Yeah.
So if you dial your temperature and humidity in, and if you get it too cold, obviously they'll be brittle and they'll break off, right? Okay. So you don't want it too cold. You want that 60,
or too
60,
dry.
It's a 5 degree range, like 60 to 65. You're okay with humidity. I like that cold temperature. Your trimmers are going to hate it. But at the same time, it's not about the trimmers. It's about the best end product possible.
Apparently, like wine went through this where they're like, God dang, by the time we get this wine to Texas, it's pretty warm and ruined. Can we like get some refrigeration going?
Yeah.
And now all wine's on a cold chain.
Well, you know who started that? Well, actually, who started it with beer actually originally is Lagunitas Brewing Company.
Praise be to the cold chain.
Yep. So Tony and Jeremy, they're featured in my book. I talk about it in my book, and it's pretty amazing. I used to work with Lagunitas a lot, and they basically were the ones that wanted Lagunitas to be the same wherever you go. We want the same experience for the consumer, right? And so Anchor Steam, I had this experience with Anchor Steam where you got it in Texas, it was terrible. Right, because it wasn't refrigerated, held properly. Or Liberty Ale is so good, but the second you bring it out of San Francisco and drink it in Oakland, it's not as good. Lagunitas, super consistent across the board because they would use refrigerated trucks for delivery. And then that evolved to not just Lagunitas, but other people in the industry doing it. They got acquired by Heineken. Heineken started doing it. Now everybody pretty much does it. Heineken is no longer skunky like it used to be. And if you drink Heineken now and you never had a skunky version of Heineken, it's a heck of a lot better now than it used to be. It used to be this skunky,
yeah, you don't even think about it.
No, it's not. It's a very clean, crisp beer. I think of it more as clean and crisp, whereas like it used to be skunky and funky.
We need to promulgate like a cold chain protocol and just give it away to the pot industry so we can hold on to those terps. Yeah. Where like, I think you got to keep it under 60, 65.
Yeah, well, we need to pull Tony McGee out of retirement and get him in the cannabis industry, getting these refrigerated delivery services, as far as distribution companies that are all refrigerated. Show us how it's done.
Yeah.
I think there's people
auditable.
There's people that are watching the show that are like, oh yeah, they do it. And it's like, yeah, there are a couple people doing
There's pieces of it.
There are pieces of it. People have good intentions. We talk about it. Now we need to execute.
Yeah. Soulful keeps AC pointed at their flower wall. So the flowers, if like you touch the glass, they're chill. It's like 55.
That's awesome.
Nice. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And I think, like if you're leaving a grow, like if you're chopping down plants, I don't know that they never ever should get above what? 60, 65, 68.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Like the colder you keep it. So the terpenes are volatile.
I get it as a consumer and then go with God. It's on you to not leave it in a hot car.
Flavorants, terpenes, flavor molecules are volatile. And so the warmer it gets, the faster they go away. Some are more volatile than other ones. And it changes. And so the cooler we can keep it, the better the product is. And at the end of the day, I want the best product possible for my consumers. My thing is seeds. So I just want to empower the cultivation partners that I have. And so we do a lot of R&D on stuff. Like with Terp Block, when I first got it, we basically had a Terp Block, a mason jar, and then we had a Terp Block, mason jar, and turkey bag. And we had those and they sat on the shelf at 60 degrees, same exact strain from the same batch, from the same trimmer. And I had those three sitting and I checked them once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all anecdotal data. I should have probably sent it to the lab each time, and we'll do that again. But basically, it was my nose because I was taking a little bit out smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all fine for the first 2 months.
Okay.
And then you started noticing that the Terp Block was fresher.
Mm.
And then after month 3, it was more apparent that the mason jar was better than the turkey bag.
Sure.
And there are different turkey bags. So, because I think they're polyethylene material or whatever.
Okay. Damn it. There's not just one kind.
No. And there's ones that are thicker and ones that are thinner. And so obviously the thicker ones are going to be less porous than the thinner ones because all of it has pores, right? And then with the mason jar was the next to start kind of changing on me. And then after 6 months, it was very obvious.
Nice. Shout out Terp Block.
Terp Block was the one. And then my buddy Lance, my good buddy Lance works for Terp Block.
Yeah.
And so we did a collaboration with Lance and with Terp Block, and I featured them in my book. And I feel like it's a great product and it's innovational, and especially it's innovational, a thing that I didn't think could be innovated upon.
Tracks for me, polymer science. It's got to be crazier than ever. Yeah. And I think they did a good job with it. That's why I'm rocking the no bag for sure. Yeah.
Well, and their competition will be like, well, it's just hype. It doesn't work. It's like, no, I mean, I thought that too. And then I did the test. And the thing is go do your test. Quit telling me what you think. You show me the test where it's not better, and I'll show you the test that is.
I'm ready to get radical about sealing, like learning the science of like a good seal, like, because theoretically you don't want any like micromole, like 0 atoms exchanging, right? Like, and apparently Uline has good, Uline has good bags. I don't know. I just like, again, in pursuit of like keeping the terps where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I can't control like the people in my household that leave bags open, but.
Well, they had the nitrogen, infused where they had a
They'll flush
nitrogen
it?
blanket. They basically flushed out the oxygen. They would be like a nitrogen blanket. And that was popular with the cans, right? When they had the tuna cans for a while. And that went away.
You have to re-oxidize them then, and they have to reopen up again because they'll just smell flat when you get in there.
Right. And that's why they went away.
Right.
So it's funny, but we're still learning. I mean, that's the one thing I'm excited about. And there's so many things that are counterintuitive where I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's stupid. And I've learned to like eat my words over and over and over.
Right. You got to be open-minded.
You got to be open-minded, especially now where we're at. Look at LEDs. Like there's so many things that even if you thought you weren't open-minded before, but you've been in this industry where you didn't like LEDs and now LEDs are the ones.
They're good.
They're good. They're really good. They've gotten a lot better. Feminized seeds, they sucked in the beginning. I was
and
afraid
now they're
of them.
good.
Autoflowers. That's another one where I was like, no way, autoflowers are bunk. And then I make autoflowers
and
now, and I love good autoflowers. They're, dude, really good autoflowers out there.
As if like there would be any other way. Like, of course it's going to start out bad and they're going to get better.
Right.
Like the rockets don't just start out landing on themselves. Like they fall over and explode a few times until they get them right. And then there's all this baggage, right? Like, oh, LEDs, oh, autos. They're the space. Like I'm smoking perfectly great LED weed.
Yeah.
And we're seeing amazing autos.
I mean, there's auto that doesn't even look like, dude,
right?
there's companies out there. I'm not going to throw them under the bus or anything like that, but I know they're using autoflowers for their bags. And I know because they're using my autoflowers. But, and
people aren't ready for that truth.
No, they're not. People aren't ready for the truth, and it might hurt their sales, right? But the truth is these guys are crushing it, dude. They're doing great and the flower's good. And, and we're talking about stuff where they can grow outdoors. They can plant in May and finish in July, have flower on the market. I think that's huge. There's companies up in Sonoma and Lake County that are getting 3 pulls a year.
And they're just starting to fix strains. So to take out all heterogeneity, like strawberry seeds and traditional crops. So like it's like clones, you can plant a row and everything. You get an auto that's going to grow the same.
Oh, they're super consistent now with the some of these breeders are breeding, there's a handful of breeders doing really, really, really amazing work. And then there's a lot of closet guys and guys doing small production, but you have to go at scale. What I've learned with autoflowers is to breed autoflowers properly, you need to breed them at scale. So you need a big gene pool to select from.
And it's still day one. I tell people like, we haven't come up with the cotton gin for cannabis yet. Like it's still all hands, which is medieval technically.
Yeah.
And so that means cannabinoids, when it's automated, are going to be like just the lifeblood that you'll swim in. You won't even notice them. They'll be so cheap on one end in like skincare products, for example. But on the top end, we're seeing the live rosins go for $100 a gram.
Yeah.
That's like more than the cost of gold per gram. So you're dabbing gold now. We're dabbing gold here in the golden age.
I love it. I love that. And, I'm one of those guys who don't tempt me because you got 2 grams of Skittles for $200. I will buy it.
Yeah, the
especially
buckets, the baller buckets.
Totally. I mean, I don't mind spending $100 a gram if it's something, because a gram can last me a long time. With this little thing, I can make a gram. I have friends that a gram might last them a day.
Yeah.
And then if I have them over, I mean, I might need to hide that a little bit, but not that I do. But, for me, I can make 2 grams last me a good month, maybe longer. I have so many different things to select from.
People have such different tolerances. You can see it in the medical literature. You can take someone up to like 1,000 milligrams a day and back down. They're fine. Versus like taking someone up to 1,000 milligrams of like hydrocodone a day or whatever.
They would be dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so some people, and then their incomes range so much that for some, like $100 is like a round of drinks with the guys.
Yeah.
And so, I'm going to spend a gram on that. I'm going to get a bunch out of it, a lot more than like 20 minutes for a round of drinks at a pricey bar in San Francisco.
Totally. We're going to get 2 big fat hash holes or whatever it is.
Dude, yeah. Like that's the thing with legalization is the joints have gotten bigger.
I'm all about the big, you've seen my joints. I do the big 3.5 grammers.
I'm just learning.
Grammars.
I'm just getting up the skill. Yeah. Where you're just like, ah.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean? I think it's actually easier to roll bigger joints. Once you dial it in, I think it's easier because I don't even roll small joints anymore because I can't roll them as good as I roll the big.
The bombers.
Yeah. I mean, they're
that's a function of how like the price per unit going down. Like this was like
unfortunately
in college to like a month's worth of weed or 2 weeks or whatever. Well, I'm loving the such a crazy era we're in with seeds with the hemp bill.
Yeah.
That I have to do my best to bring together the West Coast genetic scene after the harvest before Christmas. And that's where this idea for this event, Terpnami, is coming from. And my goal is to get 20 breeders at 20 tables over 2 days.
Nice.
For 1,000 growers, commercial and home growers, on December 7th and 8th in the city.
Nice.
And just to kind of make a triforce of events with SF Weed Week for the flower, SF Hash Week for the extracts.
It's going to be a rough weekend, though.
I know.
People are coming back from MJ Biz.
I know.
They're going to be destroyed.
I know. And my thinking is that it's a really big cannabis world. Yeah. There's a bunch of people for whom MJ BizCon's not their scene.
I know.
For cost or culture reasons, or they just don't want to go this year. Right. And there's so many more backpack breeders with just a backpack and a dream.
Tons.
Yeah.
There's tons. The sky is the limit.
When we did Weed Week and we put out the call, man, the seed guys showed up fast. It's portable. Mm-hmm. You can just do it at a table.
Oh yeah.
And but I do think California, the West Coast, Christmas time, that's seasonally and geographically when we should be getting together and having big genetics combos.
That's when people want genetics, is in the winter, because they're thinking about next year already and they have money from their harvest.
And they have seeds from their harvest.
Tradition. Exactly. They have seeds from their harvest. They have money from the guys who buy the seeds have money from their harvest typically.
Yeah.
Or traditionally. And now people, it's all around.
I imagine some teams are going to divide and conquer and go to MJ BizCon and send 2 of their guys to Terpnami.
Yeah.
Others are going to skip MJ BizCon, or there just wasn't on their radar. But I definitely want the West Coast and California and the Bay Area to be able to get together before Christmas and see what's on offer and get new stuff. And everybody who I've told is into it, especially on the grower side. A lot of home growers are very excited.
Yeah.
Come look at all that.
I'll be at the Connect event the Thursday before doing the dinner with my buddy who's one of the executive chefs at the Wynn.
Cool.
So we're going to put on a big dinner in Vegas.
Go for it.
And so, I'm excited. I'm excited about MJ Biz. I got this group of friends. We're doing my podcast is going to be there with good pizza, and a couple other podcasts will be interviewing live at the Grow World Ag booth. And so there's going to be a lot of people involved, and I'm super excited. I love these super groups where everyone benefits and they're very innocent in a lot of ways. I think that we all promote each other. And I love that. I love that when it's good brands and good people working together that can promote each other. Grow World works with a ton of people, and I feel like Grow World is a lot like I am, where we're Switzerland. I have my friends and stuff like that. I don't bag on anybody's stuff, and I try everybody's product. I like all the different nutrients, and I like testing them, and maybe some of them work better than others, but I learn more about not only the products, but also about myself and ways to grow when I'm using different products.
Nice. Yeah. We saw with Weed Week and Hash Week that people want to get together. They want to put COVID behind them. They don't want to have a reason to put on their pants. And MJ BizCon's really B2B, so this will be nice to be B2C.
Totally.
And then I love the city because it's an attraction on its own.
It is.
And we got SFO there and Bart. And then for SF Weed Week, we saw people get off the plane from SFO to line up to buy seeds from Cypher Genetics.
Yeah.
And then just get right back on the plane. It's a international spot. So I love the city. I've been there for 20 years now. Great food, great entertainment, great sights.
Yeah.
And just kind of a hub. That's why I stay there. Otherwise, I'd be enjoying 2 acres. It sounds and growing,
Oh yeah, I got my hand. Well, so I do outdoor and I do regular seeds at my house every year. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I've done it for a long time. I blew it out a couple years ago and just stunk the whole neighborhood out. And I lived on a court. I guess I didn't live on a court, but I lived on a small driveway with lots of neighbors, and everybody smelled it. They smelled it on the backside of my house, the street, all the way down. I was hearing about bocce ball players talking about how bad it stunk on their street, and I'm like, oh, interesting. It's actually, it was the street behind me. Luckily, they thought it was on, but I had 80 plants in the backyard, and so now I keep it to my 6. I feel like or less. I'm doing less this year.
Less is more.
I got 3, but like I was doing these banana crosses and I really wanted to explore what banana Skittles could be crossed into all these other things. And I love Skittles and I love banana and I love candy banana. I got something that's more candy banana than banana runts, but those runts candies, it tastes just like that.
I went after early girls this year.
Nice.
I have like a little grow in San Sebastopol, like a 6-plant grow, and I get killed by the fall dew and water. You might as well be like hosing down the plants every morning in September and October. It's brutal. You just have to like get out of the ground earlier than you'd think. And I went around to the Eagle Clash asking for what finishes early. And they scratched their head like, God, people don't ask about early anymore.
Gotta go to Lempire.
Yeah, dude. So I did get a loco berry from Crockett.
Yeah.
That they're like, this is the earliest thing we brought to the Eagle Clash.
Brian's got fire.
And then I had some Mendo biscuits from Higher Heights Nate.
Nice.
And so I ended up just making seeds this year. So I made like loco berry Mendo biscuit seeds. And I have like a super early dessert to hold on to.
How do you select your male?
Masonic told me to just like follow my instincts. And so
such a Masonic thing to say.
I know. I selected for
Edgar,
vigor and like the toughest one. But no, the most important thing was it wasn't the strongest or the biggest. It was the one that had the best terps. It was the terpiest male.
Nice.
Of the
biscuits. That's a great answer. That's a great way to do it. I think going for the one that has the most terps. I mean, I look for structure.
And it was like heads above. One smelled good.
Yeah, if there's one that smells better, that's probably the one to use. You know what I mean? I think that's just
cool. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Like if one smells better or that has a better stem rub. Stem rub's not always the end all be all. And really the best way is to make seeds with it or with all of them and then grow the seeds out and figure out which male is the best.
Yeah.
I think there's several ways to do that, but usually it's like, it's not always the male that you think is the best that ends up being the best is what I've learned. And sometimes using more than one male is another trick that a lot of people do.
I had a really frustrating year where like my A team all flushed out and the B team kind of dragged ass. Yeah. And it was all the JV guys that got cut and girls that were like, just like, looking great, totally neglected, easily the most vigorous ones. And it just humbled me again. I don't know if you have those experiences. You're like, wow, I thought I knew what I was doing. And the plant had a whole different like lesson to teach me.
Totally.
Yeah. Anyway.
Good times though. And I love breeding. I love people pushing the plant forward and learning how to breed, I think, and make seeds is something that everybody should do. It's just a natural progression to being a good grower too. After you've grown, I think it's great to learn more about making seeds. Like you learn more about yourself. So, and it's just another new thing. And it's easy and hard. And a lot of people are like, oh, if it doesn't come out great, at least you got good seeds. But like, if you don't grow it really well, you might get powdery mildew. Because the thing is like, when you make seeds, you need to harvest it later typically than you normally would. I go a lot longer when I do genetics.
Yeah.
When I'm making crosses, I might go an extra month after the typical harvest date to get the best seeds possible, especially indoor.
Yeah.
So, but it's a lot of fun. And there's something to be, so when you pick up a handful of seeds and drop them down, the sound it makes, there's something special about that, right?
I like a cross that never existed before. Yeah. I don't know that anyone's ever put the loco berry on the Mendo biscuits, like a little Crockett and a little Higher Heights coming together, totally. Like a little Grass Valley and Mendo meeting again. I have kids. It's great to have your own little Phenos running around. And the big takeaway from this year to me growing was like in school, they'll want to, like, you'd think like tracking is good. Oh, this is a smart kid. Give him more resources.
Yeah.
It doesn't work out as intuitive as that. Like there's actually probably a good reason to give them all a shot because you don't know who the winners are. The early winners will flame out. And some of the like lollygaggers, well, they actually had the key the whole time.
Right.
And so I backed away from like the belief in like public school tracking just from growing weed and being like, man, we got to give everyone a shot. Like the runts too.
Well, and that's another reason, if you use multiple males, don't select all of them that are similar. And I like the multiple males, like using 3 males. Let's say you pop 20 seeds or 50 seeds and you're looking for males. You got your females that you've separated and then your males that you're going to use. I think picking ones that represent, especially with complex polyhybrids, which most of us are working with, You want something that represents maybe one of the parents, something that represents another parent, and something that's either in the middle or different. And then you use the pollen from all three of those because you're making F1s. If you're making F2s, you would never do that because you're trying to stabilize something that's a specific way, right? Same thing as you go into F3, F4, F5, you would only use one donor and one receiver typically. But in an F1 type scenario where you're making seeds, sometimes more diversity is better.
Yeah.
You know?
So you'll do like a mix of 3 pollens on one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, or I'll open. I'll just leave the pollen, let the plants.
Yeah, natural selection.
Natural selection. They'll gravitate. I think Michael from Gage Green is big into like the natural selection, the strongest survive and all that stuff.
I did that this year. I popped the whole pack and they all went in the same container because I've grown for 6 years and I've grown great weed and it was time to just fuck around again. And I was like, we'll have Mortal Kombat. You guys will fight it out. May the strongest survive.
That's a very Gage Green thing to do for sure.
And like I full on will like transplant them like brutally, just like put on a glove and be like, yo, come with me. Just trying to like see who would be the toughest. And it worked, and there are some reasons to go down that path for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's great. I like data collection too. So like, okay, so we actually took the pollen, we separated it at a different location. We took that pollen, put on this branch, covered that branch with a pollen bag, let it sit in, sprayed it down with water. And then we did that on multiple branches, right? And then we separated those. We grew those seeds out to test them. And a lot of stuff, what we're doing now is collecting a lot of data. So I might make a cross in a small amount. We grow those out before we do any large scale seed production. I want to know if there's intersex traits, all these important things before I do a big batch of something where I make 500,000 seeds of one cross.
Last question. Is it ever like Jurassic Park where shit just escapes the lab? Like, is there ever shit growing in the medians or like, I feel like the genetics want to just like creep out and get out there. I
hope my employees would never take them.
No, obviously, I don't mean that way.
The pollen, everything is so closed loop here, right?
Yeah.
Everything, air filtered in, air filtered out. No pollen gets out in the atmosphere. No pollen gets in the building. Hopefully, we have protocols for that.
As a home grower, there are volunteers in the yard that I'm like,
My backyard too. I guarantee you, whoever's living in the house I was in, there's volunteers that pop up every year. There's probably going to be for a while.
Yeah, which was again that end goal for what the plant wanted. So it's nice to be of use.
Yeah, I mean, there's ditches in some Midwest states that are filled with feral weed, that just grows wild by the wayside, comes back every year.
When they were trying to ban it in Congress, like incredulous legislators were like, you mean the shit that grows along the train tracks? That's like trying to ban bees or like ban maple trees. It's like, were you going to go get it all? Is that what we're going to do here? Like,
if people want to know more about David Downs, where would they go?
I'd say download the Leafly app and get notifications. We'll publish the Leafly Buzz column once a week or once a month. That's a roundup of West Coast Fireflower. We do things like strain of the year every year and bud tender's choice and strains of summer and harvest. We just put out a big gummies package for the country and a big vapes package for Labor Day. And we can stay really busy finding all these cool new things like all-in-one live rosin carts all across America, live rosin gummies all across America.
Really cool.
And then I'm on Instagram at David Downs, assuming I never get taken down, or on Twitter at David R. Downs. But you can just Google David Downs and my stuff will start popping up. And make sure to come out to SF Hash Week next year, Terpnami in December. Come meet me.
I will be at Weed Week, Hash Week. Hopefully I'll make it in December. We'll see if I survive MJ
Send a
days.
team member.
Yeah, we'll just have to send somebody.
Swap packs.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I had a great time. It's a good podcast. So
thank you so much.
Looking forward to all your events.
Thanks, James Loud audience.
Dude, it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.